Hey there. You're listening to True Story No Cap. Real stories, no exaggeration, no lies. Just the raw, unfiltered moments life throws our way. Relax, lean back, and let's get started. Sarah hurried, her path leading to work. Today was set aside for a mandatory medical examination. She had to see several specialists before her shift began. Her heart squeezed at the thought. Just make sure to finish on time. Otherwise, she'd have to stay late. Sarah worked as a nurse within the hospital walls. She genuinely loved her job, but there was one thing that clouded her weekdays: the unpredictable shift schedule. Unplanned shifts caused her considerable complaints, and her colleagues invariably responded to her grumbling. Why the fuss? You're the only one of us without children, and extra money is never unwelcome. We all have families, children, husbands. I have a husband too, Sarah retorted, not hiding her annoyance. However, her husband Robert wasn't at all bothered by her late and night hours away from home. Sarah, don't worry about me. Can't I heat up my own dinner, or do I need a nanny to put me to bed? I'm not a child after all. So Sarah ended up being the one who most often bore the burden of night and 24-hour shifts. That day, the young woman managed to see almost all the specialists before her shift started. The last one was the gynecologist. Sarah was already tidying herself up, getting ready to leave, when she overheard the doctor's words. The process is going as it should. I believe there's no cause for concern. The only thing I advise is not to delay registering. Time has already been lost. Your age is no longer suitable for taking risks. Sarah froze, completely bewildered. The meaning of what was said eluded her. What do you mean? What development? Of what, exactly? Have I found problems? Am I sick? Why do I need to register? She asked, agitated. The doctor smiled. My dear, pregnancy is not an illness. Can that be called a problem? And you need to register so that you can be monitored. You are 35, which is quite a bit for a first birth. I will write you a referral. Take it to your local doctor. I'm pregnant? Sarah breathed out, her eyes wide. Impatience crept into the doctor's voice. Didn't you know? Look, madam, I have a tight schedule. I've explained everything to you. The rest is your concern. All questions for your own doctor. Good luck. Sarah mechanically took the document, left the office, and walked down the corridor as if in a dream. Thoughts swirled in her head like a chaotic whirlwind. Pregnant? Impossible. They had long since given up hope, so many years of trying without success. And now this news, falling like snow on her head, completely knocked her off her usual path. Of course, she had noticed that her uniform felt tighter, but she hadn't paid attention to it, attributing everything to an increased appetite. Put on a little weight, she thought. Okay, that could be explained. But why such sudden cravings? Could the reason be pregnancy? And how could she have completely forgotten about her cycle? When was the last time? Her memory refused to cooperate. Good heavens, she was expecting a child. She needed to be sure. Suddenly making up her mind, Sarah hurried to the nurse's station. There, on a small sofa, was her friend Chloe, engrossed in her phone. Oh, Sally, you're back. What's wrong? You look awful, pale as chalk. Did something happen? Chloe asked anxiously, looking up from the screen. Sarah just shook her head, but then, composing herself, she said, Chloe, do you happen to have a pregnancy test? Chloe had a reputation throughout the hospital as a flighty person. Her romances flared up often, sometimes even within the hospital walls, and the girl didn't always bother with contraception. For this reason, pregnancy tests were always with her. Of course I do. You even ask, Chloe replied briskly, rummaging through her locker. She pulled out a couple of packages and handed them to Sarah. Hope you don't need the instructions, she teased. But Sarah was not in the mood for jokes. With a stony face, she took the tests, grabbed an empty container from the table, and headed resolutely towards the restroom. After several agonizing minutes, Sarah stood in the cramped room, clutching two thin plastic sticks in her palms. Both showed an unmistakable positive result. She shifted her gaze from one to the other. 2 lines. And again, 2 lines. Bright, clear, leaving no room for doubt. She was really expecting a child. It happened just when she seemed to have finally let go of her cherished dream and resigned herself to the thought of being childless. Sarah was unable to work that day. She took a day off without pay, citing a sudden indisposition. She needed to get home immediately to share this incredible news with her husband. On the bus, she tormented herself with impatience. The vehicle seemed to crawl at a snail's pace, as if the whole world had conspired against her. Finally, she crossed the threshold of her own home. Entering the apartment, she pulled the test from her bag. With a smile on her lips, clutching the small evidence of a miracle in her hand, she stepped into the living room and froze, speechless. On their new sofa, covered with a blanket, sat an unfamiliar girl. Robert, meanwhile, was hastily pulling on his trousers. His face, crimson with embarrassment and anger, expressed extreme confusion. Obviously, he had not expected to find his wife in such a delicate situation. What is happening here? Sarah whispered barely audibly. Nothing terrible has happened, Robert replied dully. The girl just blinked silently, her face deathly pale with fear. Who knew what her lover's lawful wife might do? What if she decided to use her hands? Sarah was still clutching the test in her hand. In an instant, she realized that her life had taken a dizzying turn. The ground had given way beneath her feet. Her breath caught and nausea rose. Robert grabbed her by the elbow and almost forcibly led her to the kitchen. Turning back, he quietly said to his guest, "Get dressed and leave quickly." Sarah mechanically entered the kitchen and stopped, staring at the bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the table. "Why are you back so early?" her husband asked discontentedly. Sarah turned a stunned gaze on him. "I felt sick, nauseous, so I took the day off without pay," she stammered. Robert grunted, ruffling his hair. "You could have at least called, warned me you were coming home." Sarah knitted her brows. "I have to call and warn you that I'm coming into my own house? Why? So you can hide your mistress? Are you out of your mind? What is going on, Rob? What's wrong? Have you stopped loving me?" Robert avoided meeting her eyes. "No, I just relaxed a bit. And don't you dare raise your voice at me. Don't make a scene." Robert peeked into the hallway. The front door slammed shut. The guest had left. "Rob, don't make a scene in front of whom? Your fling? I have every right to shout as much as I think necessary. You don't dare shut me up." Robert flared up. "You know, I think I'll leave for a while. I'll come back when you've calmed down. You've thrown a tantrum over nothing. So what if I stepped out once or twice? What of it? I'm not leaving you, I live with you. That means I'm satisfied and there's nothing to discuss." "That's it, I'm leaving." "We'll talk later when you can think straight. And while I'm gone, think about your behavior. Maybe you'll realize what you are doing wrong, that I had to seek comfort elsewhere. And she, by the way, doesn't make scenes about me having a wife, although she could. She just enjoys the moment. I advise you to take note of that." With these words, Robert left the kitchen. A moment later, the second slam of the front door echoed. Sarah stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, motionless as a statue. She clenched her fists. Something sharp dug painfully into her left palm. It was the pregnancy test, still clutched in her hand. Robert hadn't even asked what it was. He simply hadn't noticed it. Tears streamed from her eyes. After about half an hour, Sarah made a final decision. She would no longer live with this man. He had betrayed her, and obviously she wasn't as important to him as she had thought. Staying in that house was unbearable, and she headed to the hospital. Chloe was there. Maybe her friend could help dispel her grief a little. Chloe knew at first glance that something was wrong with Sarah. "Sarah, why are you back? You weren't feeling well." "What happened?" she asked anxiously. Sarah couldn't hold back and burst into tears again. She told her friend everything. Chloe listened in silence, then exhaled heavily. "Well, friend, you really had a eventful day. Getting both the most wonderful and the most monstrous news at the same time is not an easy test. It seems your husband doesn't particularly want a child. Maybe you should consider termination." Sarah shook her head resolutely. "What are you saying?" "No, absolutely not. I won't do that. I've dreamed of a child for so long, and I won't give him up. This is my little miracle. I'll file for divorce. My decision is final. I just need to leave Robert, move to my own apartment. I have no idea how to do that. If I go back there, he'll either beg or make a scene. In my condition, I can't handle that pressure. He might persuade me to stay, and I don't want to. I can't live with him anymore after everything that's happened." Sarah covered her face with her hands and sobbed again. Chloe fell into thought, biting her lip and closing her eyes. Suddenly it struck her. Listen, I know how to help you, or rather not me, but Dan. It's elementary. Daniel was Chloe's brother. He was a great guy, cheerful, easygoing. A few years ago, he went through a divorce. His wife cheated on him, and he found out. When Sarah first met him, Dan had just separated from his wife. She saw him often. He regularly visited his sister, and Sarah always enjoyed talking to him. He seemed so sensible, so attentive. One day, Chloe remarked, "Listen, I think Dan has a crush on you. He visits the hospital awfully often for no reason, as if he's looking for you." "Don't fantasize, Chloe, what nonsense. I'm married, he wouldn't even look at me. You're just imagining things." Sarah brushed it off. Now it occurred to Sarah that Daniel could indeed be her salvation. Tomorrow her husband would be at work from morning till evening. She and Chloe had the day off. This was the perfect chance. They would have time to pack and move everything necessary to Sarah's apartment. How lucky she hadn't rented it out after the last tenants. How well things were turning out. Sarah nodded in agreement. Chloe immediately contacted her brother, and everything was decided. After her shift, Sarah went to stay the night at her friend's place. Her husband called her incessantly all evening and night, but she didn't answer. At dawn the next day, as soon as the clock struck 7, Daniel was already at his sister's door. "Are you crazy? Why did you come so early? I haven't even opened my eyes yet." But Sarah had been awake for a long time. While Chloe decided to linger in bed a little longer, Sarah made breakfast for Dan and fed him. She didn't tell him about her family troubles, but from the look on his face, it was clear he was eager to hear everything. Nevertheless, he didn't ask questions. He only said, looking into her eyes, "Sarah, know that you can always rely on me. I'm terribly sorry that you're suffering, and that your husband turned out to be a scoundrel. For a woman like you, I would move mountains, and I would do everything to make her the happiest. I would never trade you for anyone." Sarah nodded silently, but her heart felt surprisingly light and warm from these sincere words. She noticed his hand tremble when their fingers accidentally touched while passing a plate of pancakes. Could Chloe have been right, and he really did care about her? "What thoughts are entering my head?" Sarah chided herself. The move to her own apartment went quickly, and with each box moved, Sarah felt a weight lift from her soul. Chloe was in a hurry for a date with another contender for her heart, and soon left, leaving them alone. "You can go too. I'll manage." "Thank you so much," Sarah said. But Dan just rolled up his sleeves and replied, "I won't leave until we finish. You can't lift heavy things. I'll do it all myself." So Chloe did tell him about the pregnancy, Sarah thought. Anyway, sooner or later everyone will find out. The work progressed smoothly, and soon everything was done. Daniel proved to be an invaluable helper. He carefully gave her a hand when she had to step onto or down from a stool. He moved heavy furniture so Sarah could wash the floors. He fixed the broken toilet and washed the windows in hard-to-reach places. Looking at him, Sarah couldn't help but compare. Why was Robert so different? He had never shown such care, never helped like this, essentially a stranger. Finishing the last task, Sarah said sincerely, "Thank you so much, my Danny. You are truly a wonderful person. The woman who becomes your wife will be lucky. I myself would dream of such a husband." Daniel smiled back. "So what's the holdup?" I must admit, wouldn't mind. You just finish all the formalities with your husband as soon as possible, and I'll propose to you. Sarah, will you be my wife?" Sarah was speechless. Was he joking? She didn't know how to react and decided to reply in the same vein. "Daniel, I am deeply touched. But this is unthinkable. I am expecting a child by another man. What man would agree to raise another's baby? And I am not going to give him up. So alas, it's impossible. Daniel looked at her completely seriously. "And I am not any man, Sarah. I will accept your child as my own. Don't compare me to anyone else. I've long since admired you. And now that you are free, nothing will prevent me from fighting for you. From now on, you won't get rid of me so easily. I'll leave now, but I'll be back tomorrow. You need the cupboard fixed. I'll come with tools." With these words, he left, and Sarah sat in the kitchen for a long time, trying to make sense of what she had heard. Sarah stepped out onto the steps, squinting in the blinding sunlight. In her hands, she carefully held a lush bouquet. Beside her stood her husband. Daniel, with a wide smile on his face, held a baby in his arms. Sarah was smiling too. Chloe ran up to them, not alone, but with her chosen one who would soon become her husband. At last, Chloe had also found her happiness. Chloe cried out enthusiastically, looking at Sarah and the baby. "Oh, he's so sweet. I swear, just a handsome little thing." Sarah didn't answer, just absorbed the moment. Who would have thought that by breaking ties with Robert, she would find true happiness? She had become Daniel's wife. He literally carried her in his arms, protected her from the slightest troubles, and he accepted the child as his own. "This is our son, my Sally." "My son," he would say, gently stroking her rounded belly in the final weeks. "I won't give either of you up to anyone, remember that." Sarah was absolutely happy. She didn't think about her ex-husband, and he apparently didn't think about her either. His fate didn't interest her. The only thing that mattered was her new family, her beloved, adored my Danny, and their little son Leo. True love exists. Now Sarah knew that for sure. That for